2014 NFL Draft Preview Show with Stefan, Guilliams, Scott Theis, David Demarco. I'm Tim Kaiser. What better place to start than with the beginning? The Houston Texans earned their #1 selection thanks to a surprisingly disappointing 2-14 2013 season. David, what would you do if you were the Texans?
No question. You go after the best pass rusher in the draft and the best player in the draft, Jadeveon Clowney. He's 6'6", 266, and he ran a 4.5 40-yard dash. He can fit in 3-4. Roman Crennel will put him in a position where he can succeed. Opposite side of J.J. Watt, you're going to have a pass rush that you can't compete with for a couple of years. He's got a unique blend of quickness, size, and speed, and his ceiling is to be reached. You haven't seen the best of Jadeveon Clowney, so I think that makes him the surefire #1 pick.
I think he's got the highest ceiling out of everybody, but with the work ethic concerns, I'm going to go Khalil Mack, who is also a better fit for their 3-4 defense. He is a prototypical 3-4 outside linebacker. He's got 17 forced fumbles over the course of his career in the NCAA, which is a record. The guy can just flat out ball, and you have to go with the guy who's going to work. You don't know about Clowney.
If they don't trade it to Atlanta, they're going to take Clowney. As David said, he's big, physical. There are some work ethic concerns, but I think they take Clowney, high ceiling.
I'm going to go Johnny Football, Johnny Manziel. He's from Houston. They need a quarterback. Schaub is now in Oakland. The two guys they have there now are Case Keenum, who went to Houston and put up great numbers there, but hasn't really materialized in the NFL last year. TJ Yates is their other quarterback, who's played in a playoff game, but he's not an NFL starting quarterback. You take Johnny, you fire up the fans, you fill that stadium, and he's the best quarterback in the draft. And I think you take, when you need a quarterback, you take the best quarterback in the draft when you can get him. Clowney's the best player at his position, but Johnny Manziel is also the best player at his position, and you take a quarterback over defensive lineman when you need both. But as far as best player in the draft, we're all agreed it's Clowney, correct? David?
Clowney.
Highest ceiling.
So who's the best player in the draft?
I don't know if he's the best player right now. I would put Khalil Mack ahead of him.
Okay. Stefan?
Jadeveon Clowney.
I agree, it's Clowney. I touched on it a little bit. Y'all have argued with me a little bit. So let's go ahead and rank the quarterbacks now. I would take Johnny Manziel first, as I already said. Scott, what do you think about the quarterbacks?
I would put Bridgewater #1, Manziel #2, with Bortles right behind. Rounding out the top 5, I would have Murray and Carr. But I just think Bridgewater is more pro-ready, played in a more pro system. Manziel, a lot of his plays are kind of like Ben Roethlisberger in the Pittsburgh Steelers. Nobody sees it coming. It's a backyard style of football, and that's not necessarily something that works for every quarterback in the NFL. Bortles still needs to develop a little bit more. Murray is maybe even more pro-ready than Bridgewater, but doesn't have the same frame and knowledge that Bridgewater has. Carr, after his brother, we really don't know what we're going to get out of him.
Stefan?
I've got Manziel 1. He's just overall he's fitting the new NFL style. New NFL style with Cam Newton, Kaepernick, and Wilson. Any of those could win the Super Bowl in the next couple of years. That's if Carolina gets more weapons for Cam Newton. But he just fits where the NFL's going. And I got Bortles afterwards. He's a big guy. He's another Roethlisberger type guy. He's a big physical quarterback who isn't afraid to put his neck on the line. There is some arm concerns with Bortles, but I feel like a year with a veteran, it'll help him out. And then I have Carr, Bridgewater, and Garoppolo rounding out my top 5.
David?
Like some of you guys, I do have Manziel at the top. He does fit the new system that NFL quarterbacks or NFL teams want their quarterback to run. Even with some of the mechanics and some of the Hollywood lifestyle, which is a turnoff for some teams, I do have him #1 as a player. #2, I had Bridgewater. As Scott said, I do think he's the most pro-ready quarterback in the draft. Physically, he can run a very dink and dunk West Coast system. But as up here, he's what you want in a quarterback. The Russell Wilson type, Peyton Manning. He's a hard worker. He understands schemes. He ran a pro system at Louisville. #3, I have Blake Bortles. I'm not real high on Bortles, but he is better than Derek Carr, who I have at 4. And at #5, very closely, I have Garoppolo from Eastern Illinois.
I'm pretty similar to y'all's. Johnny, I think, is by far the best quarterback. He's the best talent in the draft, hands down. His only issue is size and height, and I think we've proven over the last couple of years that that's not as big an issue. Russell Wilson thrived as a short quarterback. Bridgewater, number 2, he's the best pro-ready quarterback, as you guys have said, most accurate quarterback in the draft. The hands worry me a little bit. The fact that he has to use gloves, I just thought it was a choice we saw on the pro day. It's not. He has to use them.
But Kurt Warner was very successful wearing gloves when he was in Arizona.
Later, and he's had hand problems, and I wouldn't draft Kurt Warner with hand problems. That's when he started.
Hey, Manning is starting to show hand problems and using those gloves.
Yeah,
also.
And then Bortles I have third. He's just big, and like he's the worst of the 3 quarterbacks. He played in the same division as Bridgewater and put up worse numbers. So I have no idea how people have him ahead.
He
of
did, however, beat
Bridgewater. His team beat Bridgewater. He didn't beat Bridgewater. That's why the head-to-head matchup is always deceiving, because it's not Bridgewater-Bortles. If it was, Bridgewater would have thrown him into the ground, because Bridgewater is the superior passer.
That's probably
it's not even
what would
close.
have happened, but we don't know that for sure.
Bortles is not even close to the skill level as Bridgewater has yet.
He's definitely far more raw than Bridgewater. I'll give you that.
Okay, now let's do a couple quick hits. Stefan, who's your most overrated player in the draft?
I have Bortles and Bridgewater. There are a lot of Hollywood type, like the Gruden camp helped Bortles stock, I think, in the eyes of the people and everything. They got to know him. He's going to be a family style type of quarterback wherever he goes. I have a feeling that people are going to like him, but they're going to like him so much that they're going to see past his flaws.
Scott?
Mine, Johnny Manziel. I know he's your top quarterback on all of your lists, but I just don't know if he's going to translate into the NFL as easily as we think he might. I think he can have success if he goes to the right situation. You guys had cited Russell Wilson, but he's in a very run-heavy, great defense team. So if he goes to the right team, he could be one of the best picks of the draft, but at the moment, I'm not sold on him.
I'm along with Stefan. I think Blake Bortles. You shake his hand, you look at him in person, he's definitely an NFL quarterback. He's got the physical attributes you want in somebody, but he's way too raw. His mechanics are off. He throws off his back foot way too much. He has accuracy problems. If you watch the tape from OSU and South Carolina, he missed a lot of open wide receivers, and as well as he's just too raw of a player. I don't think he's a finished product like some of the people are giving credit for.
Let's make it 3. Bortles is my overrated player. It's not even close. Bortles, the only reason he's even up close to the top 10 is because he's big. That's it. His highlight play of the year is a pass where he overthrows his wide receiver who's open by 20 yards, and the wide receiver lays out and makes a great play. That's his signature highlight, and it was a bad throw that his receiver made up for. It baffles me that we're talking about Blake Bortles ahead of Teddy Bridgewater. What about underrated, David? Who's being overlooked?
I'm looking at Antonio Richardson. He's not going to be a first-round pick. He's probably going to be a round 2 or 3, but he's a big guy, 6'6", from Tennessee, plays left tackle, 36 reps at the combine, he's 336 pounds, and I think that he relies on his power too much, but I think if he gets in the right system with the right offensive line coach, he's going to develop everything else. So I think that he's going to translate well as a right tackle. He doesn't have the athleticism to play the left side, but as a right tackle, you look at Baltimore, you look at Arizona, Jacksonville, and Carolina in the 2nd or 3rd round. He's going to be a great fit for playing on the right side.
Scott?
My guy is Kyle Van Noy, linebacker out of BYU. I mean, he just fits the linebacker mold. He's 6'3", 243. The biggest reason he's been overlooked this year is because he went from 13 sacks in 2012 to 4 sacks in 2013. 22 and a half tackles for loss in 12, 17 and a half in 2013. The drop in production worries some people a little bit. If he had come out last year, he would have been a surefire day 1 pick.
Stephen?
All right, I got Mike Evans out of A&M. He's a big physical wide receiver, and he might be giving Sammy Watkins a run for his money. He doesn't necessarily have the speed that Watkins has, but in this, again, new NFL, we see a lot of tight end work where it's big physical wide receiving. It's a necessity.
In that same kind of mold, other than Bridgewater, who I think it's criminal that he's might not even go in the 1st round, but Eric Ebron out of North Carolina is my underrated player. His tight end, he's in the mold of today's tight end. He could be the next Graham, Gronk, Hernandez without the murder charge. And like he's 6'4", 250, ran a 4.6 40, which is quicker than Gronk. He's bigger than Vernon Davis. He's all ACC, second team All-American, put up 973 yards last year. They've said anywhere from 10 to 18, but I haven't heard that much about him, and there should be more buzz because he should be that next big tight end that everybody's talking about next year. And now, in a tradition unlike any other, the player has to sit in the green room an uncomfortably long time. Whether it is Aaron Rodgers, Brady Quinn, or Geno Smith, it's always brutal to see that last guy sit in the green room by himself. This year, there are a record 30 players heading to New York for the draft. Scott, who are we going to see too much of on May 8th?
I don't know if he'll necessarily be the last guy in the room, but the one who's got the most uncomfortable weight and will be sitting there far longer than they think, I believe, is Marquise Lee, the wide receiver at USC. He's a good player, but over the last several years, wide receivers from USC just have not performed well, especially those taken in the first round. I just don't think teams are sold on him, and the buzz has died down a lot on him as of late.
He also has the injury problems. That too. We got to look at that. Stefan?
I have Bridgewater. Like you were saying, it's going to be a shame if he doesn't go first round. But how it's looking in any mock draft I've seen so far, I know those aren't signs and they're definitely not accurate 100% of the time. But I don't see very many where he's in the first round, and I think he's going to be sitting in there. Maybe beginning second round, but definitely into the second round.
David?
I think you look at Jordan Matthews. I don't think people are going to really go after a number 2 wide receiver that far up in the draft. I don't know why he's attending. I don't know why he's attending. He's not elusive. He doesn't have great speed. He's not going to take you vertically. And he's a diva off the field. He's been known as a diva, so I don't see a lot of teams rolling the dice anywhere above 20. So I think you're going to see a lot of Jordan Matthews on draft day.
I'm going to go Jimmy Garoppolo out of Eastern Illinois. He's attending, and I'm not quite sure why, because he hasn't had a lot of buzz. A few teams have him ahead of Bridgewater. I can't say it enough, but so I just don't get it. Derek Carr's been ahead of him too. He's like in the 4 or 5 range at the high end. So I don't, unless he knows something that we don't, I don't know why he's going, which scares me a little bit, which means I might be staring at Bridgewater sitting in the green room too much. Let's face it, with the amount of access we get nowadays, the draft can seem kind of set in stone before Goodell even takes the stage. However, a trade can blow up even the best mock draft. Stefan, give me a trade you think we might see on Thursday.
I said at the beginning, I think Falcons trade for pick number 1. With their problems last year, they had a horrible year last year. They're not going to go for a quarterback. They're confident in Matt Ryan. They're going to need someone big on defense, and they're going to go for Clowney.
I'm going to say that the Texans are going to trade down in the first round. I'm hearing from John McClain at the Houston Chronicle, who is more plugged into his team than anybody else, that they're going to try and trade down and get either Bortles or Mack. They may even pick Clowney and then trade him to get another pick. So I think the Texans are going to be moving to number 1.
I'm going to go outside the box. I look at pick number 5 with the Oakland Raiders, a team that has wasted a lot of picks on some bums like Matt Schaub and Matt Flynn over the years. They have a lot of holes to fill. They have the most incomplete roster in the NFL, and they're also picking at number 5. I think that's going to be the hot spot to trade up. You look at a San Francisco, but I'm narrowing in on the New York Jets. They have 12 picks, which is tied for the most with the St. Louis Rams. They've been aggressive. If anything, they've been aggressive this offseason. They went. I got Vic, they got Decker, they got Chris Johnson. If a certain guy falls to 5 that they like, that Rex Ryan might push for, and a Khalil Mack, or if Watkins falls to 4, or even if they want Mike Evans to complement Eric Decker on the other side, to really rebuild that entire offense. I think that they have the ammunition, they have the need, and they definitely have the mindset to go up to number 5 from 18, and I think that Oakland will be more than willing to trade back.
I think there's going to be a run on quarterbacks. As I've said earlier, I think Manziel goes number 1 to Texas. I think it's to the Houston. I don't think you can let go of the hometown guy like that. I think the fans will be too upset. So I think Manziel goes early, and then there's a scramble between the Browns, Vikings, and Jags to get the quarterback they want to get, whether it's Bortles or Bridgewater or Derek Carr even. I think there's going to be a push to move up the draft board to get quarterbacks, and there's going to be more that go sooner than some of the experts are saying. So there's going to be a couple different trades there to get the quarterbacks early. Now let's bring things back local. The Rams have 2 first-round picks and endless possibilities. David, what do you see the Rams doing with their picks?
I think with the first pick, you have to trade back. You have to get picks next year. They have some salary cap problems, so you can't trade with Cleveland and get 2 picks this year. So I think you move back to 6 or 7, depending on who wants to move up. You definitely draft Jake Matthews, who Jeff Fish is familiar with since he was a kid. He played with Bruce Matthews, he ended up being a Hall of Famer, and coached him in Tennessee. So you definitely look for Matthews there. If not, Greg Robinson, if he somehow falls outside the top 5. With the second pick in number 13, you have to get your defensive backfield pumped up. You have to go after Clinton Dix. He's a sure flight safety. He's the best safety in the draft. Why not? You have a need, fill a need.
I pretty well agree with most of what you said. I think they're going to try and trade down from that first pick to pick up either Jake Matthews or Mike Evans because they need a big receiver. They've got so many shorter guys, and the one big guy they have is Austin Pettis, and he has just not been cutting it for them. With the second one, pretty much the same thing. I think they're going to try and get Clinton Dix, or if he's not available by then, he may be gone. They may try and trade down again to get Calvin Pryor because Greg Williams loves safeties. He did great things in New Orleans with Darren Sharper, and I think that's just what they need.
I'm going to go away from the trading up. I think they go with what virtually every analyst on ESPN and NFL have been going with this up to the draft season is taking Robinson at number 2.
Are you sold on him as a pass protector, though? That's my big thing.
I hate drafting lineman number 2. Like, I can't stand drafting lineman in the top 5. Like, go get somebody who's going to, like, I guess I'm seeing a fan's perspective. I want to see somebody that's going to make a noticeable difference that I see. And that's what you need when you're the Rams. You need excitement. Like,
yes.
We're close to throwing Bradford out the door. Like, if I'm the Rams, I would think about taking Johnny Manziel. I would think hard about it. But because of my mock draft, I have the Texans taking Manziel. I've got Clowney going number 2 to the Rams. I think they stay there, they take Clowney, and get the best defensive line in recent history. With that, they had a great defensive line last year. With Clowney, it becomes ridiculous. Like, it's unblockable up there. That's obviously less likely. So if they stay, I think they take Watkins. Even though I'm a little worried about him, he was a little injury prone. He's got great talent, but he's a little injury prone. And if they trade back, like everybody's been saying, you take Mike Evans in the it's like 7-8 range.
Yeah.
Now it's time for ludicrous predictions. These are predictions you won't see anyplace else. Scott, what do you have for us?
In this draft, everybody keeps talking about Johnny Manziel and the slide of Teddy Bridgewater. I think Bridgewater is going to be the second quarterback off the board after Blake Bortles. I think Bridgewater goes before Manziel.
Ooh, interesting. Ooh, I like Bridgewater, so I kind of like it, but Johnny's
I like
my boy.
Bridgewater.
Johnny
Bad
football's-
value for teams.
Johnny
Bad value
football's
for
my
teams.
boy.
You can get Bridgewater much later.
I don't know about that. I think some teams are still very high on him. I think there's been too much negative press about him for it to all be true. I think it may be teams just trying to undersell him a little bit so they have a better shot at
Misinformation.
getting him.
I like it. Stefan.
I have no QBs going in the top 10.
Ooh, shots at me. Shots at me.
They just don't seem as ready as some people would like. I've heard that from many people. Mike Holmgren just came out yesterday saying that Johnny Manziel is too background playish, too much like Brett Favre. And he even said as good as Brett Favre was, he did age him greatly being his coach. And that's a concern for a lot of teams.
David?
I'm going to disagree with that. I think in the top 10, you have too many teams that need quarterbacks, and you have too many. It's potential over production, and there's a lot of potential in the top 10. If you don't grab one there, and you are a Jacksonville, you're a Cleveland, or you're a Houston, you have to rely on getting one later. So that's putting a lot of pressure on trading up into the mid-first round, the back of the first round, because if you want to get a Bortles or you want to get a Johnny Manziel, you want to be in the first round. You want that fifth-year option on your quarterback. You don't want to risk it, and you don't want to risk not getting your guy because someone else is going to move up. I think that causes too much chaos inside the first round. I don't think that's a move you want to make. My prediction is that picks 1, 2, and 5, which is 3 of the top 5, are going to be traded. I think that teams are going to want to move up to 1. I think teams are going to move up to 2. I think Minnesota, the Falcons, the 49ers, the Jets are all teams that can move up into the top 5.
With the amount of uncertainty in this draft class, it's not out of the question.
My ludicrous prediction is that Pierre Desir, cornerback out of Lindenwood University, right down the road from here, will end up as the best DB in this draft class and will be picked in the first round. First round is a bit more of a stretch, but if you want to get really crazy with it, the Rams take him at 13. They need a defensive back. Ha Clem-Dix is a small DB in the old style. Pierre Desir is 6'1". He would fit right into that Seattle defensive backfield. And that's where the league is going. There's big wide receivers coming in. The defense is now catching up. They're realizing we need big defenders. So Pierre Desir fits that mold. He's a great tackler in the open field. The speed is a little bit of an issue, straight line speed, but he'll make up for it with his range. So he should be all right. So Pierre Desir, stunner. First round, best DB in this draft class.
I can
Seattle 32. Seattle 32 is the other place
That's
to
a
look.
good spot.
Seattle 32 is the other place to look. Rams get a little crazy. But
Way too crazy.
Hometown boy. Maybe the Rams trade back. Maybe they get him later.
Not at 13. That's too much of a reach for a team that has so many holes on defense and offense.
Pierre Desir, remember the name. Well, guys, we'll find out for sure what happens on May 8th. For David Demarco, Scott Theis, Stefan Guilliams, I'm Tim Kaiser. We'll see you next time.